What's up everyone, China Cycling here. Last week Magene invited Hunter Allen, the guy who literally wrote the book on training with a power meter, to come to China and teach a few power camps in 3 cities around China. They also invited me, so I headed to the one in Qingdao at Magene's headquarters, where I got to take part in the camp and also ask Hunter a few questions about his thoughts on China and power-based training in general. He reckons we're going to see a Tour de France winner coming out of China in the future. So, let's take a look.
Woke up, told myself to push and never stop. I've been stressed out, watching both these hands around the clock. With my eyes wide, trying to get the panorama shot. Whole world getting blurry to me, answers getting lost. So I watch my back and keep it moving to the front. And remember that the world's yours, do it how you want. You've been waiting here for too long, think it's time for you to move on. Realize that there's real lies in these real times to be strong.
The camp was a 3-day camp, half classroom based and half out on the road riding. I headed to Qingdao the day before the camp to catch up with the folks at Magene. It's always fun snooping around their headquarters looking at what they're working on next. I love their little Aladdin's cave of an R&D lab, but unfortunately I'm not allowed to show you any footage from it there. Sorry. However, you're all very clever people. First, they made a power-based smart trainer, then they progressed to a crank-based single-sided power meter. You can probably guess what they've got coming soon. Anyway, the first day of the camp covered the basics of training or coaching using a power meter. If you've already read Hunter Allen and Andrew Kogan's book, most of this knowledge you already know. But the best thing is being able to ask questions. When you're reading books on coaching, you often find yourself wondering, well, what if I do X instead of Y? Or, with my schedule, I can't do 4 times A. Can I do 2 times B instead? And it's great to be able to ask these questions there and then. Part of the morning's class was about your power profile, or what kind of rider you are. Mainly assessed by working out your watts per kilo over 4 different time periods. 5-second power, which is a good indication of your neuromuscular ability. 1-minute power, which is a good indicator of your anaerobic ability. 5-minute power, which is a good indicator of your VO2 max power. And 20-minute power, which we can then take a percentage of to estimate your FTP. On the first afternoon, we headed out to test our 1-minute, 5-minute, and 5-second power. It was cold. It was Hunter's first time riding in China, so we chatted a bit about the differences of riding in different countries. Basically, about how to not get hit by a truck. Once we got to a quiet part of the city, we could start our testing. The 1-minute test involves no pacing and just starting full sprint and go full gas until the 1-minute mark. Those last 30 seconds were some of the longest 30 seconds of my life. Everyone was riding up the same short hill to do the test, and there was definitely some ego and comparing of the manhood involved. I actually set a yearly 1-minute power personal best that day, but I went way too deep and almost fell off the bike at the end. We finished the ride by doing similar tests for 5-minute power and 5-second power, doing some small ring sprints and also doing some big ring sprints. In the evening, Magene invited everyone to a delicious meal together. The networking was definitely an unexpected advantage of the camp. There was a real interesting group of people at the dinner. A bunch of the Magene staff, which includes former hardware and software engineers from the likes of SRAM and EA Games. Then there were various Chinese domestic bike champions, a former category winner of the brutal Taiwan KOM, and a plethora of founders and CEOs from the Chinese bike industry. Qingdao was once a German city and of course famous for its beer, so it would have been rude not to indulge a little. But Everyone was mindful of the FTP test that was coming the next day. The next morning, there was a more in-depth session on power training. Hunter Allen is clearly a very knowledgeable guy and full of experience. His ability to explain something really simply or really in depth is very impressive. In the afternoon, we went out to test our FTPs and it started snowing. We had a climb marked out for the test, and some of the Chinese pro riders from the previous evening's meal joined us. Watching those guys with FTPs above 5.5 watts per kilo disappear up the hill was pretty humbling. But there was a minor problem. Half of the road had been closed because of the snow. So my 20-minute power test was actually a 16-minute power test. Oops. Either way, the whole experience of doing an FTP test in the fluttering snow was a first, and it was very cinematic. Shout out to the guys from Thailand who were riding with us. It was their first time even seeing snow, let alone trying to do an FTP test in it. After heading back to the warmth of the Magene headquarters, it was time to analyze our test results. It was really interesting having Hunter go through everyone's ride in the WKO software and analyze everyone's efforts and give advice. As someone who usually spends far too long looking at ride data, this was definitely a chance to geek out. For the record, this is what my final profile ended up looking like. My FTP is down about 15% from what it was in the summer, but, you know, excuses. On the third and final day of the course, we had the same split of the morning in the classroom and the afternoon on the bikes. But this time, we decided to do the bike section on the indoor trainers. After all, Magene are very well known for their direct drive trainer, the Gravat. And with a whole room of them just sitting there, well, it would be a shame not to. Hunter designed a workout for us to do, and one of the engineers quickly added it to the Magene OneLap Sports phone app. It's kind of like a trainer road in that it can control any smart trainer and just gives you the basics you need for your workout. The workout started with a warm-up, of course, and then onto some tractor pulls. High torque, low cadence accelerations. Definitely not my forte. The Gravat's maximum resistance is humongous, and my puny legs were definitely no match. After the tractor pulls, there was some tempo riding, and it was time for some over and unders. My legs were already smashed from the tractor pulls, but the most amusing aspect of the workout was watching all the spectators shivering in their big winter coats, and everyone on the bikes sweating buckets. Doing the workouts on the trainer is definitely more fun when you're face to face with other people and watching them suffer as much as you. After this final bike session, it was back to the classroom to summarize everything we'd learned. The course was very educational, and I definitely learned a lot in the 3 days. I think lots of us read so many articles online and watch so many videos about training or coaching that it all kind of becomes a blur. Having a 3-day structured course definitely clears things up and makes the knowledge a lot more applicable. We all received graduation certificates from the Peaks coaching group, and it was happy days. I definitely recommend the course to anyone with a serious interest in training with a power meter. But if you want to know more, head on over to peakscoachinggroup.com. With everything wrapped up, I had the chance to sit down with Hunter and ask him some questions. But this video is already long enough, so I'll put the interview into another video in the next few days. Let me know if you enjoy this vlog style of video or not. It breaks up the monotony of the product reviews a little bit, and hopefully gives you some insight into the Chinese cycling industry. Subscribe so you don't miss the interview, unless you're watching this in the future, in which case just click right here to watch it now. China Cycling, out.